Did you know? Publisher Electronic Arts has faced several controversies since they acquired the exclusive rights to make Star Wars games from Disney and LucasArts. Even prior to EA obtaining the Star Wars license, they had an adverse effect on the series' games. In 2007, EA acquired developer Pandemic Studios, which had created the first two installments of Star Wars Battlefront. This acquisition meant that Pandemic could no longer work with the Star Wars license with LucasArts, leading to many issues with the failed Battlefront 3. EA eventually closed Pandemic in 2009, laying off over 200 employees. Though EA announced they had secured the rights to Star Wars in May 2013, they had a teaser video for their reboot of Star Wars Battlefront ready at E3 just 1 month later. Coincidentally, EA was voted Worst Company in America by readers of the Consumerist magazine for the second year in a row in 2013, beating out companies like Bank of America, Walmart, and Comcast. EA's then CCO, Peter Moore, commented on the win by admitting, "We were guilty of some stuff." Battlefront launched in November 2015 alongside Star Wars Episode 7, but the game was noticeably lacking in content directly from the film. To explain the absence of Force Awakens content, EA CFO Blake Jorgensen said, "The one thing that we are adhering to is that you can't make a game in Star Wars that violates the canon of Star Wars, meaning you can't take something from the future and bring it back into the past. This explains why characters and locations from Rogue One were included in DLC, while Episode 7 content was excluded." EA's 2015 Battlefront was criticized heavily for a lack of content, and particularly the absence of a single-player campaign. EA CEO Andrew Wilson acknowledged this feedback at EA's E3 2017 conference, saying, "2 years ago, we launched Star Wars Battlefront, and we got a lot of feedback, a lot of it positive, and a bunch of it constructive." That's a euphemism for not as positive. As a result of this feedback, 2017's Battlefront 2 featured a full single-player campaign with an original story, though EA still ran into controversy with the title's multiplayer. During the beta test for Battlefront 2, EA was criticized for introducing loot box-based microtransactions, which some believed gave players substantial advantages for purchasing items with real money. In comparison, it was estimated that players who did not buy the loot boxes might have to grind for nearly 40 hours to unlock a single hero in the game. Reddit user MBM Maverick summed up the issue on the game's subreddit by explaining that they had bought the deluxe edition for $80 and were still unable to play Darth Vader without grinding. EA's official community Reddit account replied to the thread, reasoning that the cost of the hero characters was so high because they wanted to give their players a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking them. Reddit users were understandably upset by the response, resulting in the comment generating more than 300,000 downvotes in just 24 hours. As of the writing of this video, the comment currently has 675,000 downvotes, the most in the website's history by over 650,000 votes. In response to the outcry, EA removed microtransactions from Battlefront 2 until, quote, changes were made to the game. Additionally, the cost of each hero was reduced by 75%. However, the number of credits awarded to players for completing the game's campaign was also reduced by 75%. Though EA implemented the changes to the title, it might not have been their decision. According to the Wall Street Journal, several key executives at Disney, including CEO Bob Iger, were concerned about the community backlash against what they consider a key property. As a result, they put pressure on EA to make the changes to Battlefront 2. The entire controversy caused the price of EA's stock to dip by 2.5% on the game's launch day. The backlash against EA and Battlefront 2 was not just at a community and financial level. Several governments have also expressed concern about loot boxes. In November of 2017, the Belgian Gaming Commission began an investigation into loot box systems featured in titles like Battlefront 2 and Overwatch, and concluded that they were indeed gambling. Cohen Jeans, Belgium's Minister of Justice, went as far as to say, "We will certainly try to ban it." Since the release of Battlefront 2, representatives of the state of Hawaii have also looked into legislation to regulate microtransactions in games for underage players. In the press conference announcing these intentions, Hawaii State Representative Chris Lee described Battlefront 2 as an online Star Wars-themed casino designed to lure kids into spending money. Battlefront and Battlefront 2 are not the only Star Wars games in development at EA. Other games were put in development at Titanfall developer Respawn Entertainment and Dead Space developer Visceral Games. Visceral's first attempt at a Star Wars project was an open-world game, codenamed Yuma, inspired by the real-world desert in Arizona where the Jabba's palace scenes were filmed. Development of Yuma was shuttered when EA poached Uncharted series writer and director Amy Hennig for the project, and she refocused the game into a linear, narrative-driven action-adventure called Ragtag. The main character was codenamed Dodger, a man forced into the galaxy's criminal underworld after dodging the Imperial draft. Kotaku's Jason Schreier talked to several ex-developers who all thought that Ragtag's narrative was awesome, with one saying, "This was the coolest shit I've ever seen." To differentiate the game from Uncharted, a theme of sabotage was incorporated, and players were to be given non-lethal options to defeat enemies. However, development hit trouble early on when EA split Visceral's team in two, with half of the team working on Ragtag and the other on DLC for Battlefield Hardline. This did not help the studio's morale, with one developer saying, "It was made very clear that the development team MVPs were the ones creating Star Wars magic while us lowly mortals slaved away on Hardline DLC." The team also had trouble with EA's in-house engine, FROSTBITE 3, which was made for first-person shooters and was missing tools for third-person action games. Visceral was also located in San Francisco, California, which has the highest cost of living in the United States, making the developer EA's most expensive studio. The publisher originally offset these costs by teaming Visceral with JADE Raymond's Montreal-based Motive Studios, but Motive was pulled from Ragtag to create the story mode for Battlefront 2. Still, Visceral created several high-octane demo samplers that one developer described as Uncharted Star Wars. The demos and story, however, were not enough to impress the executives at EA, who told Visceral's employees that they were closing the studio and that they had just 3 weeks to get portfolios together. It was explained by several developers that the game and studio fell apart because of ambitions set too high for the budget they were given, clashes between Visceral's staff and director, and the creative chokehold Lucasfilm and Disney had over Star Wars. Any change in a character's costume or weapon design had to be approved by Lucasfilm, which could potentially take months. Some ex-developers also felt that development was unfocused, with one explaining Dodger couldn't even shoot his gun and were fine-tuning where his hand placement needed to be on a door. Just 3 weeks after Visceral's closure, EA announced that it had reached a deal to purchase Respawn Entertainment for $400 million. EA was forced into this decision as South Korean publisher Nexon had made a bid to buy Respawn, and EA may not have wanted to lose a valuable partner or a developer working on one of their Star Wars games. Still, the timing of Visceral's closure and Respawn's buyout is interesting. Ragtag's development was not cancelled despite Visceral shutting its doors, and was moved to EA's Vancouver-based studio. In their announcement of Visceral's closure, EA explained that Ragtag was to be the foundation of a new game that will be a broader experience that allows for more variety and player agency. EA made no mention whether or not the game would include microtransactions. Did you also know that the Millennium Falcon had a massive redesign before the first Star Wars entered production? Or that Obi-Wan was planned to survive his showdown with Darth Vader in Episode 4? For more facts, check out the Did You Know Movies video on Star Wars.